evening, everyone. It is 6:31 p.m. on January 27th, 2022. We are currently operating virtually. Give me 1 second. Let me get to my right spot here. It is 6:31 p.m. on January. All right. So on July 23rd, 2021, Governor Fiscal issued a gubernatorial disaster proclamation finding that a disaster exists within the state of Illinois. And as a result, the Oak Park River Forest High School Board of Education in Cook County, Illinois is convening a remote regular board meeting tonight, beginning at 6:30 p.m. for closed session, followed by an open session at 7:30 via Zoom. So if we have any attendees who have logged in now, we will shortly be going into closed session and our regular board meeting will begin at 7:30. So if you want to come back at that time, that's when the rest of the agenda will be done. All right, the state of Illinois is operating under disaster declaration related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And based on the public health concerns, I, Sarah Spivey, as head of the public body, don't believe it's either practical or prudent to hold an in-person meeting of the Board of Education on today's date. I further believe that it's neither practical nor prudent for the public to be present at our regular meeting location. We're going to continue to hold remote meetings with updated practices to comply with Public Act 101-640, that was signed by Governor Pritzker on August 12th of 2020. All right, Gail, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Kofsky?
Here.
Dr. Mohanraj?
Here.
Mr. Arkin?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Martiri?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
And Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Is there a second?
Second.
Gail, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Mohanraj?
Yes.
Mr. Arkin?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Martiri?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky?
Yes.
And Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so board members, you have the closed session link in your email. Gail can probably send that out around again for anyone who can't find it. And for anyone who's watching from the public, we will be back at 7:30 at the same link. So if you want to go and grab a coffee and come back, we will be here shortly. Thanks.
See if we can find the board meeting agenda. Well, here. See if we can- Just like give it to me.
Hey, Gina, how's the semester going? Good? I'm teaching a course on housing this year. It's
I love that, Ralph. And I just want to acknowledge that we know that we're being recorded right now.
right.
So I just wanted to say that. And I get to teach student teachers this semester. The excitement of people becoming educators is most amazing. Most amazing.
It has to be fun. I mean, really invigorating for you, right?
It is very exciting.
One of my books is the Color of Law. I don't know if you've read that one on housing, but it's really worth reading it. But it's not a fun read. It will not make you happy.
I will have to check it out.
We'll give it another few minutes until 7:30, just because that's when the public expects us to start.
Oh, we have 3 whole minutes, Sarah.
Yep.
In teacher
Enjoy it.
minutes, that's a long time. You can do a lot in 3 minutes in class.
Shut down. Come out. And you can just sit here.
Okay, it is now 7:30. Welcome back, everyone. And I believe up first is the student showcase.
Yeah, that is correct. So what I'm going to do to kick things off here is turn this over to Nicole Epson first, our athletic director, to kick things off. And then later on, she'll turn that over to Susan Johnson for our activities report. So Nicole, take it away. Tell us about our athletic students.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight with us, I mentioned this last board meeting and we recognized in person, but the students weren't in person, our cross-country boys and girls who qualified for state. So we have those individuals with us tonight, so you can put a face to a name. And I'm going to turn it over actually to the coaches just to kind of introduce their athletes. So I'm just making sure that they are on and can hear me. Coach Baldwin, are you here? I think I saw him. And Coach Raymond. All right, so Coach, I see Coach Raymond. Coach Raymond, can you introduce your athletes who qualified for state, please?
Yes, so let me pull up the participants. We have Avery Menace, we have Natalie Quinn, Ann Stein, Katie Stab, Lenny Starrett, Samantha Dewey, and Eva Carson present with us. And Anna Schultens, I don't think is on the call, but she was also on our state team. And Josephine Wellen, I saved her for last because she was also the state champ, first state champ in school history for cross country.
Congratulations. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
And then
you.
we have Coach Baldwin here, who's going to introduce his state runner as well.
Liam Newhart was the individual qualifier on the boys' side to the state meet.
Excellent. And
Well done, everyone.
we just wanted to say congratulations. And for those of you guys that are on with us today, I do have your prizes or presents from the Booster Club. So if you stop by my office, I will give you those starting tomorrow. And we are so proud of you and thank you so much for representing our school so positively at the state meet. So thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah, congratulations, everybody. And thank you again, Nicole, for kicking things off for us. Susan Johnson, our student activities director, is going to take it from here.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we have with us our leader and students from Black Leaders Union. So our sponsor is Mr. Lee Wade, and he's here to introduce a couple students that he's brought to share about their club.
Yes, good evening, and thank you, Susan. Again, I'd like to thank the board for this opportunity to allow Blue to be showcased to you guys tonight. With me tonight is Zachary Ellis, who is the current president of Blue, and Riley Bazillion, who is a member at large and also active with all the things we've been doing. So I'm going to allow Zachary to go ahead and just give you guys some insight as to what Blue is all about. Go ahead, Zach.
Hello, everyone. I won't keep you guys too long. My name is Zachary Ellis, and I am the current president of Black Leaders Union. This club is basically a safe space for Black teens at OPRF to collaborate and share ideas. What I really love about the club is I can connect with Black peers on a deeper level and talk about issues that we all deal with being Black youth. And I think that's one of the main reasons this club is amazing.
Thank you, Zachary, for your leadership, and thank you, Mr. Wade, for your leadership with the group.
Well, thank you so much. Just one other student, Riley, is here. Would like her to just to speak to you just for a moment too, please.
Hi, I like Black Leaders Union because I'm able to express myself and help make the school more diverse by making videos and having it shown to the school so people are more informed and more educated on Black culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Riley.
And just real quick, so Riley mentioned some videos. Blue is responsible for creating our Martin Luther King Assembly every year. They take the lead on that and they decide what they want included in it and how it's supposed to go. And so this year, because we felt we couldn't gather all of our students like that safely, the students chose to do an alternative format with videos. And so every day in advisory last week, we had a video that showcased some of our talent that we have within the school. And Black Leaders Union helped decide what was going to be included in that and participated in each video.
Susan, do you think there's any way that you could send the link to the board for the video? We'd love to see it.
Absolutely. It was 3 videos that we had, and I'll share them with you guys. There was our STEP team performed, our spoken word students performed, and then we also had a couple choirs perform. So,
well, we will look forward to that treat.
Yeah. And then I also know that Black Leaders Union is kind of working on some things that they want to add to Black History this time around as well. So we'll be working on that next week.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, folks. It's so great to put names with faces and faces with names and learn more about all the awesome things our students do, because we hear a lot about our students, but often not this fun leadership development creative aspect. So that's why we love having you come before us, to talk about it. So thank you both. And thank you, Riley.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I believe next is FOIA status, is that right?
Yes, we have had 7 FOIA requests and 6 have been resolved.
Thanks so much. Then we have our student council report.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Hallie.
Hello.
Nice to see you guys. So I'm just going to give a little update on the club. So student council has been sort of brainstorming ways to increase school and student morale. So we picked 2 minor national holidays and came up with different activities and awareness ideas. So the first one we chose was Compliment Day. So that just happened this past Monday, the 24th. We made banners and posters that were hung up around the school to encourage students to give compliments and spread positivity to their fellow classmates and teachers. And then the other one we chose was National Hot Chocolate Day. So that's this coming Monday, the 31st, and we ordered around 1,800 hot chocolate packets that will be passed out to students and teachers after school on Monday. Our hope is they can go home, relax, and enjoy a cup of hot cocoa. So we brought up to our club just the new construction around the school. We wanted to gain some thoughts that some of the members had. So overall, the thoughts on the new construction that recently opened, the feeling is very positive. Students like the look and feel of the new spaces. They especially liked the classroom-like area in the library tutoring center. They feel it's a great space for club meetings. Some concerns were brought up by members concerning the new spaces. Just mentioned that there's not enough or adequate advertising of the new spaces and kind of ways to use them. Some are unsure of how you can work in one of the classrooms, use that large staircase classroom area, or even the whiteboards. And it's kind of funny we're bringing this up just because on News Scene there was kind of a short 60-second clip that was kind of addressing this and some of the features. So if we could have some more advertisements like this, it would be very helpful to students. Students also voiced frustration over the study hall rule that limits the number of students per class allowed to go to the library during their study hall. And then students are concerned about having to sign up for the tutoring center a week ahead of time. They're worried about needing help and not necessarily knowing that far in advance, and then not being able to get the tutoring that they need the week of. Other issues, only other concerns students voiced was about the tardy sweeps. Students feel that it only makes them later to class, and there are some cases where teachers weren't writing passes for bathrooms or water fountain visits, and students were kind of getting swept. On the other hand, the music that is played at the last minute of the passing period seems to be working for students. It was definitely a change for everyone in the building, but it seems everyone can hear it if they're in the halls or the bathroom, and it really gives them like a head up that there is less than a minute to get to class. Students would love to hear a different song every day, but they know that's a difficult change to make, and they appreciate the changing of the song every week. Yeah, that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Hallie.
Thank you.
We have the superintendent report.
Okay, a few things to share. Not a very long report today, but an important one. So first off, this coming Tuesday, February 1st, it's the release date for Respect the Mic, celebrating 20 years of poetry from a Chicagoland high school. And you can see the book right here. This is a pretty fabulous little book in our school. The book features the poetry of dozens of current students and alumni, including NBA and Dancing with the Stars champion, Iman Shumpert, National Youth Poet Laureate, Kara Jackson, National Student Poet, Natalie Richardson, comedian Langston Kerman, and more. And I'm going to say that of those more, actually in this book, I just was flipping through and I saw this, is Patrick Crisp, a student who graduated in 2014, and who is an employee for us right now. And it just so happens is going to be part of our presentation later this evening when we're taking a look at priority one of our strategic plans. So congratulations to everybody who's in this book. A lot of our recent graduates are in here, and if you get a chance to take a look at this, you can do so. You can pick up a copy at the book table here in our locally owned bookseller. It is 10% off there. So feel free to stop by and pick one up, and know that we have copies of this for our students throughout the school to be used in various classes. So just a really exciting thing for everybody there. And kudos to our longtime supporter of spoken word, Pete Kahn, for his excellent work. He's retiring at the end of this year, and he just deserves a host of accolades for his just fabulous program that he started at this school. It's nationally and internationally recognized program here at OPRF, something we should be immeasurably proud of.
Greg,
Oh, please, go ahead.
just to jump in to say, I don't know if everyone attending is aware that Chicago is the birthplace of spoken word at the Green Mill. And if you get a chance, I think it's really terrifying. I've done spoken word. So whether if you can attend at our school when they're doing a performance or elsewhere, it takes a lot of courage to get up there, especially for the first time, and really perform rather than just reading a poem out loud. So congratulations to all the students. I was definitely not this brave in high school, so I'm really impressed with them.
You know, thanks for saying that, Marianne. And today, it just so happens today, was the sophomore slam kind of championship, where all the English classes sophomore year over the past several weeks were developing their own spoken word poems and performances. And they performed them in their classes. And from that pool, they was whittled down. Eventually, we had 16 of our sophomores compete today. And I had the pleasure of being one of the 4 judges for these presentations today. And I will put in a nice little plug. Dr. Pruitt Adams was able to zoom in and help to judge the event today. And you know, a lot of the jobs that she and I have had here at OPRF have involved being in our offices and doing things like board meetings and this. But when we get a chance to be there in front of students and see their performance, it's absolutely inspirational and so exciting. So that was just a thrilling way to kind of tie this theme together for this recognition. I have 2 more quick things though that I don't want to forget in addition to that. Number 2, for the first time in OPRF history, intramural bowlers competed as individuals in the IHSA Boys Regional Bowling Tournament. So congratulations to Peyton Wernette, William Zeiser, and Jackson Davis, who went on to compete at sectionals. You can see a feature of that in the Wednesday Journal as well. And finally, in other athletic news, the JV drill team placed first in the Evergreen Park competition, and senior swimmer Ben Lewis broke the East Pool record in the 100-meter fly against Riverside Brookfield. So congratulations to Ben and to all of the students and the fabulous work that they've done throughout the past several weeks here. So
that was an awesome superintendent update. Thank you. I can't wait to buy the book. I might get it for the board. I think that's something we should all have at our bedside. All right. Next up, we have employee recognition. I am going to just front the fact that I do not speak Chinese, and I am going to do my very best with some of this. So today we're happy to recognize our employee recognition winners for January. We've got two categories, Teacher of the Month and Employee of the Month. So first, I would like to congratulate Eileen Hung, who was selected as the Teacher of the Month. Here's what people who submitted the nominations had to say about Eileen. Hung Lao Shi is an amazing teacher. I had to Google that, so forgive me, folks. She has taught me so much this year, more than ever in my 12 years of doing Chinese. Everyone says Mandarin is hard, but Lao Shi challenges us to think of it as different, not difficult. And while some of us are better writers than speakers or vice versa, Lao Shi always uplifts us. This year, we have seen her go through some tough situations, and yet she makes learning fun and easier. You can tell she truly cares about her students and her job. My peers and I look up to her and admire what she does. I often find myself coming home and showing my parents what I've learned from the lessons. And I will never forget how much she's impacted my life and changed my perspective. So congratulations, Eileen. I believe she's unable to be with us this evening. Is that accurate, Greg? Okay.
Yeah, she wanted to be here. She just couldn't be. Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations to Lao Shi Hung. I am doing my best with that, so forgive me again. But we will make sure that she gets I just made my screen all messed up, that she gets her framed certificate. All right, then we have our Employee of the Month, who's Judy Tigueros. And here's what people who submitted the nominations had to say about Judy. Among the challenges the last few years have brought, Judy has been a beam of light and pride at OPRF. She's always positive and genuine in her interactions with students and staff. Every day she's fully engaged in trying to do her best to maintain a safe and positive school environment, even when she is put in challenging situations and disrespected. As she walks through the halls, she has this amazing way of upholding the rules while still treating everyone with respect and connecting with them. Judy is such an amazing asset to our school, and we're lucky as a community to have such an amazing person working with us. And forgive me, Judy, I said your last name wrong. It's Figueros. So congratulations to you. I saw her. I believe she is with us. So if there's anything, Judy, that you'd like to say, feel free to do so.
I just want to say thank you. It is an honor to be chosen. I just want to say thank you for those that nominated me and chose me. I also want to say thank you to a lot of my teachers, because I know that I was chosen by a lot of the teachers. I want to thank them because without their support, without their backing me up in tough situations, it would be very hard at times. So I want to say thank you to all of them. They have been very supportive with me. You know, I know it's hard for everyone. We're still dealing with this COVID, so it's still stressful at times. It's still hard, but you know, when I go to work, I try and give my best. I try and do what I can. I do care about my school. I love my school. I love my kids. And just thank you. Thank you. It is an honor. Thank you so much.
We so appreciate it. Especially, you're right, it's been incredibly challenging for all of us these past couple of years. So thank you for all that you're doing to make this school more warm and a more inclusive environment, while still upholding the rules. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Sarah, I actually have one more recognition that I'd like to throw out today.
Absolutely.
And so just give me a moment here. We have in the call today, one of our science teachers, Katie Kralik. It is, and I'm gonna read a little bit that people have shared. There she is. Hello, Ms. Kralik. It's good to see you. It is truly my privilege to recognize Katie Kralik tonight on her attainment of the National Board Teacher Certification. For those of you who are unaware, the National Board Certification is arguably the most respected recognition a teacher can achieve. To earn this recognition, teachers subject their practice to intense scrutiny and they commit to making what was already excellent performance even better. Those who know and have worked with Katie would not be surprised to hear that she has earned this recognition given the unparalleled enthusiasm and devotion she applies to teaching chemistry here at OPRF. They wouldn't be likely to hear about this recognition though from Katie, because she very quietly, selflessly, and tirelessly goes about the business of making this a wonderful place for students to learn science. Given that, it seems fitting that this brief moment celebrates Katie and this tremendous accomplishment. Katie, we're fortunate to have you at OPRF. I remember when you and I came in together the same year into the district, so it's a pleasure to know you throughout your years here, and congratulations on this incredibly impressive achievement. It's just, we're just thrilled to have you here, so thank you so much.
Thanks very much. We make chemistry really fun, and I'm glad somebody noticed that we do a lot of work at it too. Thanks so much.
Congratulations, Ms. Kralik. That is awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. It's a lot of work. Thank you for doing that.
All right. So now we have public comments. I would like to note that since 2019, we have an updated policy for public input and meetings. It's board policy 2:230 if anyone is interested in looking at it. But we have been operating under this policy probably without folks really realizing it, but we are limiting public comments to 30 minutes. If there is a issue on which there are two sides to the issue, it's 20 minutes per side to ensure that we get a plurality of voices and opinions. Public comment is not meant to be a dialogue with the board. It's meant as an avenue for the public to make their opinions on matters coming before the board known to the board. So with that, Gail, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do. John Duffy.
All right. Mr. Duffy, if you're on, you may speak.
I'm John Duffy, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Committee for Equity and Excellence in Education. We're in our 11th year working with equity allies around Oak Park and River Forest. Tonight, we thank Dr. Hardy for his preparation of the Office of Equity and Student Success Action Plan. Of special significance in the plan is ensuring equitable practices by putting in place a process for an equity analysis of resource allocations. This action, we insist, has an immediate connection to ensuring the greatest possible success of all students in the restructured freshman curriculum. In particular, the plan will apply resource allocation review to at least 3 departments by June of this year. This process is part and parcel of the Racial Equity Procedures Racial Equity Assessment Tool, commonly called the REAT, and I think Dr. Hardy is calling it the REAT. It's a set of protocols central to the faithful execution of our racial equity policy. As board members, we also urge you to consider, when you're looking at substantial expenditures on facilities, to subject those spending decisions to the REAT, and to consider that many students are not experiencing academic success at our school. We maintain that the REAT and the needs of minoritized students cannot be applied only after funds have been set aside for state-of-the-art facilities. We note also that the last formal report to this board on the racial equity procedures came in June of last summer, and it established the priority of equity analysis work, both resource allocation and the use of the REAT. In targeting REAT training, Dr. Hardy's action plan supports our community's belief that equity analysis and action remain the heart the mind and the soul of District 200's goal to become an exemplary district for all forms of equity. Specifically, Dr. Hardy's plan describes equity analysis training in Goal 1 as implementing, quote, comprehensive equity procedures and analysis throughout the organization. As we approach the 3rd anniversary of adopting our racial equity policy, it's past time to make equity analysis a top priority. To that end, the community looks to learn the details and how and when this action will take place, and how the board and Superintendent Johnson will provide the necessary professional learning for the board, the administration, and department leaders to confidently and effectively use the REIT in evaluating student and faculty programs and district expenditures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Gail, do we have any other public comment?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next is our consent agenda. Are there any items that board members would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Sarah, item K, please, just a quick question.
Sure, we'll pull that one. Are there others? No? All right, so I'm
Sarah,
going, yes.
I'd like if we could, I guess, pull and discuss C, so I can understand that more clearly.
Sure. Okay, any others? All right, I'm going to apologize in advance because I need to read the name of every policy. So this will be a moment because we have so many. So please bear with me. But I'm going to do my best to make it somewhat painless. So I move that we approve the following items. The open and closed minutes for December 16, 2021 and January 13, 2022, and declare that the audio tapes of the closed session minutes from June 2020 be destroyed. B, the personnel recommendations, including new hires, transfers, resignations, and releases. D, check disbursements and financial resolutions for January 2022. E, the monthly financial report for November 2021. F, the treasurer's report for November 2021. G, I have my wrong glasses on, so this is making it even more difficult. Transferring approve the resolution to transfer $5 million from the operations and maintenance fund to the capital projects fund and transfer $9 million from the education fund to the capital projects fund as presented. H, the NIIPC rollovers to the companies as presented. I, the 2022-2023 school year, the awarded bidder is the National Food Group for applesauce cups for $189,263.13 as presented. To approve the 2022-2023 school year for the awarded bidder National Food Groups for fruit cups in the amount of $518,700 and McCain for frozen white potatoes for $422,105 as presented. Okay, we will do that later. And then, this is the best one. The administration recommending that the board approve the sharing of the student records and information between districts 200 and districts 90 and 97 in the form of IGAs, which are attached. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Gail, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kopsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm especially thrilled about those IGAs, so this is awfully exciting. Okay, so our next item, which was pulled from consent, is C. It's approval of the property tax appeal board resolution as it was presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and then Cabri, you had a question about this one?
Yeah, as I'm reading it, so just so I understand it clearly, is the annual approval that the district on behalf of their legal counsel can intervene on appeals made for property taxes? Is that essentially it?
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, if a resident appeals, we would then try to intervene and deny that appeal or affect the amount that's being reduced by. Is that my understanding?
Yes. And we only have 60 days to do this, so it's too short of a turnaround to bring it to the board. So this is just allowing our attorney to handle it in a timely manner.
So will we just vote on this, Sarah? Or is that how we would?
Yeah, we vote on the resolution to sort of allow it to happen. I don't know that it necessarily does happen. I'm not sure that this is something that we automatically do. It just gives our attorneys the option to do so if they believe it's in the district's best interest. Yes.
That just seems kind of broad for best interest and what that means and the right of a taxpayer to appeal the taxes, then we can intervene. Not sure I'm very comfortable with that, but that's my stance.
Greg, I don't know, after talking to our attorneys, if you have any additional insight that I didn't share about how the process works?
No, I don't, except for to reiterate what you said. My understanding is that it doesn't happen on a regular basis, but I don't have more information to share. I'd have to go see what I can find out.
And Cabri, I don't know that this helps, but just for information, this is a typical, right? This is something that we vote on every year that I've been on the board, at least. Not that that's necessarily helpful, but.
Well, I understand. I mean, if the board wants to vote and they approve it, that's fine. But I think it could be an overreach just from the standpoint as a taxpayer and just looking how policy is done. Then you have a right to appeal your taxes and to say, well, could affect our fund. And I'm just not completely comfortable with this policy. That's my position. But the board decides that that's fine, but I'm just not comfortable with this. As it's written.
Do you want to move to either amend it or to table it? I don't know what the timeline really is.
Nothing you can really amend, I don't think. It's just, I think essentially it's the ability for us to intervene with PTAB when they're doing evaluation for an appeal or even recapture the money that's lost. And just my stance on property taxes is what I find it's not really the value of your property, it's what the budget for the community is, and then we assess people's property tax assess on that, not really what it's worth. And you have different rates you're doing behind the scenes, and Cook County does it. That's my personal opinion, just what I've known about taxes and research, and what I said before. Just I know it's based on the budget, not necessarily what it's actually worth. And for us to say, yeah, we can appeal someone's finding to intervene to make our budget work, I'm just not really comfortable with that. So there's nothing you can give me more. That just as it's written, I just don't really like the policy.
Yeah, understood. Any other questions or comments from other board members?
I guess a question more to help give because your comment is the utilization of this policy, and I don't know if Alyssa, if you can provide any backdrop. My understanding is it was more for what would be substantive, appeals, but I don't know if there's any data.
Yes, you are correct. And it's a lot of reassessments, and I can't tell you the exact amount, but it does happen. And I believe it's a lot of businesses that it's happening with, commercial side. And we could give you more information if that would make you more comfortable.
Well, as it's written, it's very broad. You can tell me it's businesses, but it's a very broad statement. As I read through it, it doesn't specify who. It doesn't say, well, we won't do certain zip codes, or we won't do certain properties for people that are appealed at, because taxes always go up, they don't go down. So that's just, there's nothing more. I'll say, oh yeah, I get it, I'm agree. I just don't. But if we vote for it, that's fine. I'm very cognizant of how taxes work, especially property taxes, particularly in a community like Oak Park, where our economic diversity is valued, not just our racial.
Thank you. Anything from other board members on this? Gail, could you call the roll, please? Oh, Marianne, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. You popped up in my upper left corner, so I got you. I'm sorry, Marianne, you're still muted.
Sorry, guys. The resolution, as I understand it, just to clarify, we have the power to intervene regardless. The Board of Ed has the power, and this resolution is about timetable, about the intervening within 60 days aspect. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, I don't know if this addresses it for you, Karib, or not, but I don't think we're being asked to vote on whether or not we should have this power. I think we have this power. So this is, a vote on whether we can, I don't know, make it a little easier on the attorney, I suppose, to do it in a timely manner. So I think you raised an interesting question about whether we should have this power at all, but I don't think that's the vote before us right now.
All right, Gail, would you please call the roll?
I didn't hear you, Gail.
Mr. Martieri,
Oh, yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
No.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kovsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, okay, now this is the one that's going to get a little wild. This is the our policies. All right, so I move to approve the following policies for first reading. These were discussed at our last committee of the whole. Policy 2:105, ethics and gift ban. Policy 2:110, qualifications, term and duties of board officers. Policy 2:120, board member development. Policy 2:220, school board meeting procedure. Policy 2:260, uniform grievance procedure. Policy 3:40, simply titled superintendent. Policy 3:50, administrative personnel other than the superintendent. 3:60, administrative responsibility of the building principal. 4:60, purchases and contracts. 4:120, food services. 4:160, environmental quality of buildings and grounds. 4:165, awareness and prevention of child sexual abuse and grooming behaviors. 4:170, safety. 5:10, equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment. 5:20, workplace harassment prohibited. 5:90, abused and neglected child reporting. 5:150, personnel records. 5:185, family and medical leave. 5:200, terms and conditions of employment and dismissal. 5:220, teacher substitutes. 6:15, school accountability. 6:20, school year calendar and day. 6:50, school wellness. 6:60, curriculum content. 6:120, education of children with disabilities. 6:135, accelerated placement program. 6:300, graduation requirements. 6:310, high school credit for non-district experiences, course substitutions, re-entering students. 6:340, student testing and assessment program. 7:10, equal educational opportunities. 7:20, harassment of students prohibited. 7:30, student assignments and intra-district transfer. 7:60, residence. 7:70, attendance and truancy. 7:80, release time for religious instruction and observance. 7:150, agency and police interviews. 7:160, student appearance. 7:180, prevention and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. 7:190 student behavior, 7:200 suspension procedures, 7:210 expulsion procedures, 7:250 student support services, 7:260 exemption from physical education, 7:290 suicide and depression awareness and prevention, 7:315 restrictions on publications, high schools, 7:340 student records, 8:100 relations with other organizations and agencies. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, who seconded that, please? Oh, thank you.
All right, and Tom, you had a question about which policy?
Well, I just want to know if I changed one of the letters, would you have to read this whole list again? No, my question for the administration is, we had a good discussion on this at the COW, and there were a couple points that were mentioned that were, worthy of relooking, et cetera. So my question is, because there's so much here, what is different in what we see here versus what we looked at COW, if anything, just to make sure I didn't miss anything, changes.
There was a need for us, most of the discussions we had at the committee of the whole meeting was regarding the need to implement some things that were, otherwise not in place.
Right.
And that's right. And so I don't want to rehash that, but we are committed to doing that, of course. One was regarding Constitution Day, for example, something that of course we teach a Constitution and we do all that good business, but we have to make sure we double down on that. And Roxana, I'm gonna pull you into this conversation for a moment, because I think that was a policy that you had referenced when we were talking about this 2 weeks ago. You had gone back on, you had done some research on it, and you had realized that we actually were correctly implementing that policy, or very well prepared to do so. And it was a little unclear because of that conversation last time we met. So could you speak to that, please?
Yes, the question was specifically about how many days are allowed under FMLA to be used as sick days for childbirth. And I think the specific question was about, it was only mentioned 30 days. And our practice is to allow up to 60 days if a teacher or another employee has enough days in their sick bank previously allocated. So the reference to 30 days was just an example that was listed in the press comment. That example will not be part of the policy. And it was just a reference to how specific policies on sick leave may refer, may apply to different districts. So the language that is in the policy is provided that this is in line with sick leave policy of the district, and it's absolutely is.
So I guess coming back, Greg, to the question, so the documents that we have before us are the same documents that we had at COW.
May I interject? There was one policy, I think it was 4185, about a January 31st date that has.
Right.
That has
it was
been,
2022 and 2023. So that
correct.
change was amended.
Yes, it was.
And okay, I'm just, I just want to connect the dots of we clearly enforcing, et cetera. That's a different issue. I'm just wanting to make sure, because there's a lot of content here, and just understand what has changed. So thank you. You've answered my question.
Thank you, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah, I think you can read the list of policies.
I think once was enough. Does anyone else have any questions or comments about any of the many policies? Okay, Gail, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Arkin.
Yes.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Kowski.
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj.
Yes.
Mr. Martiri.
Maybe. No. Yes.
And Ms. Dixon's 5E.
Yes, I'm just very grateful no one tried to amend that. So thank you all for that. Okay, so we now have our discussion item, which is the strategic plan update on priority 1, racial equity.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So I am thrilled to introduce our equity team here today. Dr. Hardy is here to take the lead on this presentation, along with the rest of the members of his team. But I'm just going to very briefly say, by way of introduction, that the board may recall that back in December, on December 16th, specifically, when we were giving our State of the District presentation, we referenced the fact that throughout second semester, we were going to give updates in a more thorough way about how our strategic plan is designed to help us realize the improvements that we know we want to strive for as a school district. And first on those list of presentations is priority 1, racial equity. I want to point out that in the introduction to this presentation, there is a link to our district website that speaks to how we are updating and kind of charting the progress in our efforts for the strategic plan. That is a living document. As we move through the semester and as we continue to complete our goals, we will be updating that information. So, but the most complete and the most ready to go right now at the moment is, of course, the racial equity presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hardy and his team to take it from here. So it's all yours.
Thanks, Dr. Johnson. Board of Education Board President, thank you for having us tonight. We are honored to be here and to try to do 2 things tonight. First, we want to honor the agenda and talk about the strategic plan and priority 1. And we'd also like to talk about this department's action plan, which encompasses those strategic goals. Those were the 2 tasks put before me. And we want to honor those. I want to welcome our team. They're here. And for the sake of time, Board President, I'll introduce them as we go. I won't stop and do that right now. But I'll introduce the team members as we go. I am going to share here. I'm hoping you can see my screen. Dr. Johnson, you got the slide? Thank you. You're the only one I can see anymore, so thank you. So I'd like to start very briefly by reviewing the previous initiatives in the previous version of the strategic plan. Last year, the team in the administration and all involved stakeholders were able to initiate 3 specific initiatives. 1, the idea was to substantially implement the equity procedures. The second one was to identify a long-term partner. And the third was to think about this state funding model and how we might discuss how we allocate funds. The team laid a really good foundation for us to start with, because all 3 of those were initiated. We were not able to complete them or bring them to fruition, and there were different reasons for each of those initiatives. Some of it was just the transition in leadership and when that occurred. Some of our board members may recall the discussions around an equity audit. I was able to get into some of the minutes around that, and there was some discussion there. And so the long-term partner discussion kind of moved off the table a little bit. And then there have been conversations about funding and how we can think about how we allocate funds, but we're not there yet. So the strategic initiatives that you will see in the rest of these slides, they encompass those, but expand the work to the department. There were several findings in the entry plan that we executed when we started this position. And one of them was that this office, 1, lacked a bit of direction, and 2, our team was in a bit of, we weren't functioning as a team. And so the folks you'll meet tonight, we took that on and developed a very clear, I'm really proud of the team members, and I want to say that publicly and to the Board of Education. They have worked hard to bring a sense of direction to the Office of Equity and Student Success, and to do it with a focus on really building capacity. We have to figure out what we can achieve, what's achievable, and not try to do too much, even though what you're about to hear sounds really, really comprehensive. But we decided let's go after some things that we can actually achieve without forgetting about much of the other work that we have to do. So moving forward, we have 4 goals in the department action plan. Goal 1 has 4 projects. Goal 2 has 2 projects. Goal 3 has 2 projects, and goal 4 has 1 project. Ultimately, in the long term, it is our belief that Oak Park and River Forest High School should be a model school for racial equity. That's the vision. And we believe these goals and the projects associated with them will help us begin and continue the process down the road. We're going to jump around a little bit, Board President. I'm not going to go in order, goal 1, goal 2. I'd like to start with goal 2, and I'd like to introduce our trauma-informed interventionist, and she's going to talk about goal 2, which is to establish a school-wide trauma-informed climate and culture. Sherilyn Jones McLeod, you have it.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Thank you so much for having us this evening. Can you go to the next slide, please, Dr. Hardy? Thank you. Tonight, I just wanted to briefly share with you some of the goals that we've been working on to incorporate our trauma-informed practices into the climate and culture and fabric of our school, Oak Park River Forest High School. Most of my work has come out of the youth survey that was taken probably in 2018-19 now because of all of the pandemic. But one of the questions specifically asked students if they felt safe in their school. And our numbers, if you all remember, were really low in that area. And so in taking that youth survey question and incorporating it into my work, I felt that 2 main things needed to come out. One, we needed to do a lot of training and professional development to ensure that the mindsets were changed around what is trauma-informed care, how do we know that we're practicing it, where are our deficits, and so on. And so we started that work by administering the ARTIC assessment in the beginning of this school year. And the ARTIC stands for Attitudes Regarding Trauma-Informed Care. We administered to all of our faculty and staff, as well as some of the board members participated, to get baseline data around how trauma-informed we are. And although there's not an end goal for trauma-informed care, it's a continuum, but to see where we fell on that continuum and let that assessment guide our professional development practices. And since then, we've been implementing professional development for our faculty and staff, including some coaching inside of the classrooms, restorative circles, and the like. Additionally, we wanted to cultivate safe spaces for our students. We wanted students to feel safe, not only academically, but physically and emotionally throughout our building. And so the first was to create a flagship space, which we are calling the Peace Room, which is now open-ish, yay. And it not only serves as a safe space for our students to gain clarity and de-escalation in times of need and stress, but also serves as a peaceful space for our faculty and staff to enter prior to the start of the school day and throughout the school day and after school, so that they may also be able to decompress, de-escalate themselves when they're feeling overwhelmed. We collaborated to make sure that we have the Calm app and Headspace so that folks can go in there and decompress before or after teaching their students. We also are providing, in conjunction with the professional development, training around how to create these same safe spaces inside of the classrooms so that students do not feel they need to leave the classroom to go to the safe space, the Peace Room, to find a bit of peace, but to help our teachers and faculty create these spaces within their room, whether a physical space or a psychological space, a brain break, put your headphones and meditate for 5 minutes, whatever is possible in that space, but helping our faculty and staff figure out ways to help our students feel safe throughout the building so that we don't only rely on this one space. So the Peace Room will act as a model for what should happen throughout the building, but also a training ground so that folks can come in, experience the space, and figure out how they can take that space into other areas of the building. And with those two baseline projects, we believe that this will help guide the work of trauma-informed care throughout the building and create a more equitable and calm space for our faculty, our staff, and our students, as well as the community. Thank you so much.
Our next goal, goal 3, was about ensuring that families receive the non-educational services that they need in a timely manner, by removing the barriers that interfere with their educational success. One of the things we learned in our transition was we lacked 2 things, and those are the 2 projects for this goal. Number 1, we need to have a very clear referral system that connects families to the resources that they need. And then the second half of that is we need to track that referral system. So we want to do both parts of that. Remember, the focus is to build the capacity of the office, to build the capacity of our organization. And we felt that was a really important baseline project. How are we making sure that in a timely fashion, when there is a barrier in place, preventing a family or a student from accessing the many resources of our school community, how do we refer them directly to those services? And then how are we tracking those referrals? It'll really, really help our families navigate the school systems and all of our programs. That's sometimes a barrier within itself. It'll help us with our outreach and engagement. And it's also going to help us connect students and families to the non-academic and extracurricular programming that we have here in the school. I'd like to yield to 2 really, really cool people that I've just come to totally admire the work that they're doing. Goal 4 is about our motivational mentorship program. And I'd like Shannon Perryman, our program coordinator, and Patrick Crisp, our assistant mentor, to tell you a little bit about goal number 4 and how we're going to build capacity for our motivational mentorship. Shannon, you have it.
Thank you, Dr. Hardy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shannon Perryman. I coordinate the Motivational Mentorship Program. This is programming dedicated to the success and security of students of color as they explore the many ways of knowing in academia. So a major component of our work is rooted in the improvement of executive functioning skills and social emotional wellness. We lean into transformative learning and care via culturally relevant teachings that inform our daily plus weekly practices, inspiring critical discourse, vulnerability, authenticity, and joy. So the events of COVID really diminished our numbers with student participation, but not our faith in the influence of loving community connection plus engaging content to create equitable learning solutions. Our assistant mentor, Mr. Chris, will dive into the logistics of our recovery plan for optimum student recruitment and retention. Thank you, guys.
Hey, how are you guys doing today? I'm Patrick Crisp. I am a class of 2014 OPRF graduate, so it is very good and pleasing for me to be in this position and being able to help, especially from the standpoint of a student who is also part of the program when I was there. So for us, we came up with 3 key project measures for us to move forward in completing the goal that Ms. Perryman just referred to. So that first goal being we want to improve our attendance rate to about 60 to 75 students on a weekly basis by June, as well as making sure that we maintain that participation rate at a clip of about 80% week to week. And then moving forward from that, we also want to have an uptick in student attendance via daily office check-ins during non-instructional time, which means we offer students the ability to come in during their lunch periods, during their study halls, and have a space very similar to what Joy Lynn also provides, where kids feel safety and somewhere that they have to go and be comfortable within the constructs of the OPRF school system. So with that, we plan to have 16 to 25 students consistently check in daily and 14 to 25 students participate in Mentorship Friday every lunch period on Fridays. And then that third project that we have is creating strategies to ensure that our numbers stay consistent while seeking growth in the opportunities that we have to do that. That being greater exposure of the motivational mentorship program through our student ambassadors, to also highlight peer-to-peer connection. So having the students do more of a role and have more of a role in what it is that we do and what we accomplish. That way they feel that this program is just as much a part of their being in the school as much as it is a part of us being there for them. We also plan on doing tabling, and we have done tabling quite a few times so far over the course of the school year. Obviously, the lunchroom situation has fluctuated over the course of the last 2 semesters, but that's been a very good effort. And as well as making sure we have a monthly advisory speaking rotation with different student groups throughout the school, and making sure that they can engage and let us know what it is they feel that they need as students in OPRF. Back to you, Dr. Hardy.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And then finally, Board of Education and administration and the public, we have goal number 1. And I want to thank you for sitting patiently with us for these few minutes. I will be as efficient as I can. As you know, we needed a really strong action plan. That was the primary goal. We've done that, but there are 4 projects in goal number 1. We want to strengthen our racial equity professional development programming. We wanted to establish an Office of Equity and Student Success advisory team that will monitor our department plan. We need to develop and implement a resource allocation review process in alignment with board policy. And then finally, implement those comprehensive equity procedures throughout the organization. As you read closely, you'll see it's just another iteration of and continuation of the goals that were previously established with a few minor changes and refinements. Let's talk about the first project. Really happy to see some thoughts and feedback from the members of the community around 3 areas. A really strong new faculty onboarding process, continuing with the learning communities that are already in place, commonly referred to as care teams, but expanding them in the future to staff. Right now it's faculty. And we know that this work impacts everyone. And then lastly, bringing back the monthly opt-in professional learning where people can come as their schedules may permit for that continued discussion, deeper and richer. I'm really happy to share with the Board of Education, the development team, a group of teachers and leaders and staff members. There are secretaries in this group and teachers and counselors and school leaders who have said, we want to take this work on. They have a really clear scope of work that you just saw on the previous screen. And I just wanted to acknowledge them very quickly to thank them for their agreement so far. The only person that did not give agreement, I want to be transparent, as Melody Brown, the administrative assistant. She just doesn't have a choice. Let's move to the second project. Our Equity Advisory Committee, really cool opportunity for us to partner with the student organization, the students advocating for equity. They've agreed to partner with us and serve as the primary student voice on the advisory committee. They have a very clear set of goals that they want to achieve. 1, analyze, understand, and our improvement plan, make recommendations. That's that monitoring and accountability, provide constructive feedback and input to school and district leaders, and review and make recommendations on policies and procedures that may be perpetuating the disparities that we're trying to rid ourselves of completely and totally. I want to publicly thank those students as well as their faculty advisors for their agreement. I want to thank parents Reginald Crawley and Amira Rahman for agreeing to be the parents on the advisory committee. And we are still looking for 2 community members to serve on that committee. On to the third project. This is a big one. It's actually a convergence of 3 things: board policy, ESSA, and the research. All 3 say, here's the point of the slide. All 3 say we have to, 1, differentiate resources to meet the needs of students. And then 2, we should be analyzing how that differentiation is impacting student outcomes. And so really starting with evidence-based funding, that's the funding model, looking at our supplemental funding, whether it be grants and so on, Title I, IDEA, and others. And then at the end, comparing the pupil outcomes to our spending. But here's what has to happen right before that. And this is the bolded item that's at the end there. This is the big part. It's the program evaluation and the evaluation of personnel. So we take this money in and we spend it. We have to get better at evaluating those programs and determining, did they move the student outcomes as they were intended? And if not, what tweaks can we make? What refinements can we make? Or after some period of time of implementation, do we need to remove and change those programs? That is lacking in our school district right now. And the resource allocation review process will give us a real clear heads up and a real clear and direct approach to that program evaluation that has to be a part of this process. And then the final project is the administration of those equity procedures. Now, the folks who came before this team, they did some really good work getting many of these procedures started. We have a lot of work to do, though, because as you can see, a lot of those procedures are not highlighted yet. So there is some initial work understanding and trying to initiate many of the board policy 712 procedures, but we still have some work to do there. Now, this plan is very different than many other plans. Our final speaker for the next couple of seconds will be Ms. Melody Brown. She serves as the project manager. So while the public sees public documents that say, here is our plan on a page and so on, there's actually work going on behind the scenes. I fully intend to hold myself and our team accountable. Melody Brown is really good at doing that. And she's going to tell you how we're monitoring our projects that you just heard our team talk about. Melody, you have it.
Hi, I'll be super quick. What you see is kind of our project management app that we use. On the side here, you will see kind of where our goals are, what our challenges are, what projects we're going to use to attain these goals. So you will see every single part of our department has their goals and projects listed. We kind of are just using this to keep ourselves accountable to what we are telling our school community that we are pushing through to them. And this is all accessible to all of our departments so that everyone knows what everyone else is doing and we can kind of hold each other accountable. The next section here is, you're going to go, okay. This is kind of our duration of goal setting, how long it's going to take us to get to these goals. Where we are throughout the process. So you will see each goal is defined. We're giving each other some dates, keeping ourselves, again, just accountable for the school year. Is this a project that will take, a month? Is this a year long? Who needs to help us in these goals? So this is just kind of our accountability chart. We like to say who is accountable for each section of this project and how we're all going to keep ourselves kind of moving forward with what is next.
I really appreciate Ms. Brown holding us accountable, calling meetings with us individually, where we are, what are we doing? And the software is really, really beautiful. All the team members have access to the online version of the software, and then Ms. Brown manages the desktop version. So here's the summary. It's about building the capacity of our department. It encompasses the strategic plan on the executive director side. You see all the areas of work and the projects there. The slide is important. It's the last thing I want to tell you, because I need the public and the Board of Education to hear that we are not ignoring all of the other work. We know that we're still identifying curriculum for our motivational mentorship program. I am the Title IX coordinator for the district, investigating sexual harassment. We still support, and where we can, the behavior education plan. We're planning all kinds of events. I still investigate racial incidents, and we're seeking those community partnerships. The work that you may not have heard that we're focusing on and trying to build capacity around is important, but it doesn't mean that we're ignoring all of these other items that you see here. Now, why did I show you this slide? One, so that people can see that racial equity coaching is still important. Our membership in MSAN and the tri-board work, that's important. But I also wanted to point out a very important red flag, because if you see this screen, everyone watching should be saying, whoa, wait a minute. How can we do all of that? Because as you know, all those dots that popped up, that's all me. That is not the trauma-informed specialist. That is not motivational mentorship. There is a red flag here that I want to be very public about in terms, and that's why you hear us saying, we need to focus on capacity. What can we actually accomplish? And while it means focusing on some specific things so we can move them down the field, it doesn't mean we're ignoring everything else. I want to thank the Board of Education for letting us share this action plan, including the strategic plan and this update on racial equity. And of course, we're here to answer as many questions as we can. Please direct them all to Melody Brown.
Awesome, awesome presentation. Okay, board members. Gina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hardy and team. I just am thinking about when I first came on the board, where we were and where we are now. And I am actually very excited about what you've presented. I do want to, one of the challenges that I find with our racial equity policy is that it is extensive and broad, and all of those are challenging to address. So I'm appreciative of how you narrowed it down to have some specific focus for each of the areas. I am still, as you mentioned at the end, you actually began to address my question before I asked it, which is capacity, right? Which is there's a lot to get done. And I think there were maybe 4 or 5 of you that presented, and you, Dr. Hardy. So I want to hear your thinking on capacity building for the accomplishment of those goals, but I also would like to know what other departments and areas might be working with you, because I find that, equity work can very easily be siloed into the equity department, and would love to know what how it filters out. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. You probably didn't see some of the smirks on some of the administration's faces. They were positive because of your second question, and I'll get to that in just a second. Board Member Harris, this is interesting. I spent a lot of time, as you can imagine, transitioning to the job, studying the policy and the procedures that go along with it. And it's sad that I have this stuff in my head, but I'm not sure if we all know. In the policy and the procedures, the word shall is mentioned 62 times. We're talking about, I believe it's Ralph, who has asked us, what policy, what are we supposed to be doing? And we're trying to take an account. We're talking about one policy, shall, 62 times. The word annually, something is due annually in this one policy, 23 times. The word plan, there's a plan due, 22 times that word is mentioned in these procedures. I can't remember biannually, Board Member Harris. I think it's maybe twice, so we maybe got lucky on that one. It's a lower number. It's a very low single digit. Ongoing is mentioned, and there's ongoing stuff that has to happen. I think it's 11 or 12 times. And you do the math on that, that's like 120 requirements in one policy. So you better believe I'm having some conversation with the superintendent about a word that you didn't use. I'm using it, sustainability. This is how addressing racism and systemic inequities and injustice gets lost, is because we do this kind of thing. And it's my intention that we won't do that. And so you're correct. Focusing that work was really, really important so we can actually get something done. That is a lot for just one of the many policies that we are collectively responsible for. And to your second question, the administration, the leadership knows, they've heard this speech from me a million times in different ways and in different spaces. Equity is everywhere. This notion of what are the equity items that we're doing, everything is about equity. And so and people are maybe getting a little uncomfortable saying, I need to call Patrick. And Patrick is saying, nope, you have to call Dr. Fiorenza about teaching and learning and where equity is happening there. And Dr. Fiorenza has been doing a phenomenal job racializing our work, the racialization of assessment, and how do we build equitable assessments, bringing that work in. Yes, let's call Dr. Hardy about hiring practices. Nope, that's Dr. Sanders' area. And so that partnership that you hinted at is already starting to take place, where we have to not let the word equity become a siloed thing that is a side conversation, but that it is permeating our organization. It's going to take some time, but we have started those conversations, and I appreciate the leadership team's patience with me as I keep pushing that agenda. Board Member Harris, I know that was a long answer, but you asked a tough question.
Thank you.
Fred?
Oh, thank you. So first, I just want to give a shout out to Melody Brown. And if she's on it to keep everybody accountable, I know people will be held accountable. Dr. Hardy, you actually have almost answered every question I had, because I had questions about capacity and sustaining the program. But there is one other question I have, and it goes to goal 3, which is the outreach to parents in the referral system. And I'm really concerned about how we get the families to engage. I mean, is this going to be on a proactive basis, so that if we see a student who is struggling in need of supports, that we'll be reaching out to the family and offering certain whatever we feel is the best support for that student? And then how do we determine what supports work for what students?
Board Member Arkin, you would ask the one question about the one area that is challenging for us, because that position is vacant right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that work is just, I'll just say it's interesting for the team right now. What was happening though, it's not is it proactive, sir? It is proactive, and that was the challenge. The former outreach coordinator was being stopped in the hallway. This family needs something. People were recognizing a need, and she would get stopped in the parking lot, walking down the street, and she had no way of recording that information, tracking that information, because people were being and are still being so proactive. We needed to get our hands around it. And so unfortunately, I feel uncomfortable going further than that, because I imagine the new person once hired is going to have a huge voice in what it looks like going forward. So the answer to your question is yes, it will be proactive. I only wanted to add gently that it is already proactive to the point that we needed a process to make sure that we were responding in a responsible way. That is what's prompting this.
Thank you. And I really want to thank you for this work. And I go back a few years before Gina, and to see everything that has developed, and to see you in this office, and to get some this kind of a concrete plan is so heartening. And I applaud you for this work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Capri?
Yeah, so Dr. Hardy and team, I just want to thank you guys for the work you're doing. This is, it made my evening. I'll say that, because it's great to see we're having quantifiable and measurable tasks and goals that we're hitting. And it's not just a broad equity. Let's do equity and make it better. And what I liked, what I appreciate is how you're saying it's going to permeate the entire school, and not just a silo of the equity office. Because part of the reason why I think it's important is we saw when we were having the curriculum change, it was like should be silver bullet. You change your curriculum, And if we don't see children of color, Black and brown kids getting higher grades, then it failed. But as you're showing, it's more than that. It's not just the curriculum, it's the whole systemic part of the school. But as you were also talking, I had a major question, but you kind of answered in your last slide. It's like, how is one person going to do all this? How is one office going to do all this? And I worry about burnout, right? Burnout's been happening, it's countrywide because of pandemic and other issues, but this work is exhausting and it can wear on you. So what I would like to see, because you talked about it, is a measurable outcome to spending, and not just, we're spending it. It's actually work. It's a program actually working. So I would like to have a more detailed look at, I don't know how you guys want to do it, to ensure we're funding this appropriately. We're having a facilities conversation on the 14th of February, how we're going to fund this is necessary, all these things are necessary. We should do the same thing for this. If we, as board members, we have a responsibility to make sure all of our students are succeeding, right? And the school helps also, but the work in dismantling this systems that have disparities is important. So if we're going to have a meeting on facilities and how to upgrade, how to pay for it, we should do the same thing here. Because what I don't want to see is this all the stuff is going into it, the work is happening, we're pulling too many different directions, and people get burned out and they just don't have the capacity to do it anymore. So that's more of a statement. I want to see how we can make sure we fund and sustain this beyond a year, 5 years, 10 years. Until the problem is gone, we're not done with this. And it's going to be a couple generations from now. Let's be honest about it. It might get easier, but I'll make sure this stays as a priority beyond our time on this board.
Thank you, Kareem. Ralph?
I'm trying to click everything I'm supposed to click here, lower my hand and everything else. All right. So Dr. Hardy, thank you for the presentation. I appreciated your answer to Gina's question. Gina, you raised a couple of questions I had, and the sustainability piece was one of the things I was concerned about, and I'm glad you're focused on that. But part of my day job is running a think tank that looks at the public sector's capacity to sustain core investment in public services, and so I'm very sensitive to the sustainability piece. I appreciate your focus on measurables. I would like to see them a little more specific. And I'd like to see a few of these programs that you identified. You gave us a 9-page memo with the initiative, the metrics, and the research. And that really very much follows our policy. And I think you did a great job doing that. But it would be helpful for the board to see, for instance, I'm going to take an easy metric, annually increase enrollment and persistence of students of color in advanced placement courses. Do you have measurable goals like by X% over a Y period of time, Y meaning number of years, so that we could have that kind of measurability and sort of that tie into the underlying student outcome, or an improvement in the survey results where students are feeling safe because of what we've done on trauma-informed initiatives, et cetera, that you've implemented. I would just like to, and this will take time to do, see if you and the administration could work out these kinds of measurable student-based outcomes that are tied to each of these initiatives that we could evaluate over time to help you in the process of saying, hey, maybe the implementation in this one area hasn't been with true fidelity, which is why we're not moving the needle as much, or maybe this program isn't the right program for us and we need to change course. But for the board to sort of understand the true student-based outcomes with a little harder data of what you're anticipating these additional initiatives would generate would really help us do our job from a accountability standpoint, and help us ensure that you are getting adequate support and resources to sustain the initiative to actually attain the outcomes that move the needle for students, so that Oak Park, as I agree with you, becomes a leader in the country, not just in the state. on this. We have, in my mind, the resources to get there. I think we have community support. I know you have board support, and I'm very impressed with your approach. But now let's put it all together and all be on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish by when, through which programs, so that we could all do this evaluation process in a collaborative way and really ensure we're changing the system and we're changing the system permanently to generate these better outcomes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. It first of all, it helped me remember that I didn't mention the metrics and at least point out to the to everyone that that document is there. So I really appreciate you drawing the attention to that, because those do exist. And then it led me to just there's a really good foundation here, and it means so much more to me now than it did based on your question than it did yesterday, of making sure people understand the interwoven nature of those 12 indicators in board policy. So the data that you're asking for wouldn't come in the metrics that I gave, right? It will come. It's why we're approaching it this way. There are 3 other indicators where that type of hard data must be presented. Number 1, in equity analysis. 2, equity data analysis. And 3, I believe, is accountability and monitoring, where, remember those, I was trying to explain, one of you asked something and I was telling you how many times a plan is due or a report is due. Those are the reports that are due. I as the consultant to the leadership team, I have to do a better job of making sure the team understands how we apply the REIT to all of this work, because it's interwoven throughout all 12 of those indicators, and it's interwoven in their work, but also the reporting that is required of this policy under those indicators. And so that's part of that. You heard me, Board Member Martiri, talk about the capacity building. That's part of the professional learning that we have to do, is making sure we understand what's actually required of us, and then figuring out a strategy. How do we actually pull that off in a real and meaningful way? So there are 3 other places even where that data has to show up.
Yeah, Dr. Hardy, I think you're off to a hell of a start. So, I mean, this is leagues ahead of where we were a year and a half ago, and we're moving down the right path. Could you share by the way, the PowerPoint that you utilized tonight was not part of the board materials, at least I didn't see it. Could you share that PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
With the board? That would be awesome. But you have this board since I've been on it, so I can only speak to when I've been on it. Actually, Fred, Tom, Sarah predate me and post-date me. Fred, in your case, both. But I know this board, since I've been on it, has been highly supportive of getting this initiative, meaning a true equity initiative, right, so that we truly have a system that works for all of our students, where all of our students feel safe, all of our students feel welcome, but all of our students are also challenged to achieve to the best of their abilities and feel comfortable doing that. So I think working out this final sort of outcomes-based metric that's a little more specific, even if it's staggered over time. I know how long it takes for educational reforms on the front end to start showing really measurable outcomes on the background. I want to be realistic, but I really want to have those, just that we, like I say, we have this ability to work collaboratively together to ensure we have implemented the right programs with fidelity that have actually moved the needle and are changing the system sustainably. That's where I want to go. I think you've done a phenomenal job leading the department so far, and I want to be part of a board that gets you the resources you need to build the capacity to finish the job.
Thank you.
Marianne?
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Hardy. I have, I think, 2 quick questions and then a couple of comments. The first question is just I think Fred has already basically covered this, that trauma informed slide that you presented, you're going to be sending that to the board, right? I just wanted to look at it in more detail, in part because I was getting some questions from parents about how we would be implementing that in the school. And so as long as that's coming to us,
you'll have it.
Great. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Could you just, for my information, take a minute to explain what motivational mentorship is and how it is different from traditional mentor-mentee? Because it sort of said in the presentation, or maybe it was in the board packet materials in advance, that they were different, but I don't know what the difference is, if you could explain.
Yeah, motivational mentorship is really deeply rooted in African, specifically West African traditions of community.
Mm-hmm.
And the community becomes critical. So it is not a traditional one-to-one mentoring program where Ms. Perryman and Mr. Crisp are going out to the community asking people to be mentors. And, and then we go through our processes of bureaucracy and getting them all background checks. And this isn't that type of traditional program. It's also meant to counteract the burnout that typically happens in one-to-one mentoring and the time that's required. But the sense of community is important. So it is group mentorship.
Okay.
Not one-to-one mentoring, group mentorship, where Mr. Crisp, at least in our context, Mr. Crisp and Ms. Perryman lead groups of students in daily community work. And then you heard Ms. Perryman mention the Friday big day. If she wants to unmute and give you, Ms. Perryman, I hope she was able to stay with us. I can't see. So I don't know. I believe she'll still be there, just to either her or Patrick talk about that Friday piece that happens that I don't feel comfortable trying to articulate for them. But it's really that sense of community, not one-to-one. The group setting is critical to the work. Patrick, I saw you on mute. Go ahead, talk about the Friday.
Yeah, so typically on Fridays, the way that it's set up, well, genuinely speaking over how the program runs, is that we have a Monday through Friday schedule of how we go about engaging with students in the first place. So on Monday, for example, we call it Marathon Monday, which is simply just us engaging the students in content that will, over the course of the week, be completely explained, and then Friday wrapped up. So on a Monday, we could have a simple discussion about foreign leaders that just so happen to be people of color. And then by the end of the week, understanding how those people of color operate their countries, what happens in those countries, what different people of color live like in other countries. And week to week, the topic changes, with each semester having its own actual purpose, encompassing one entire idea every semester, even as much as quarter to quarter. So once, like our first semester this year was really about creativity in people of color. So we touched on different artists, different writers, and things of that nature. And then this semester, we're focusing more on people of color in the grand scheme of societal structure. So that's politicians, that's liberators, and things of that nature, and getting them to understand those type of things, as well as having them understand the true balance of self, and understand the different places in which you can go and can be and can see yourself in society, as well as having people in which you feel comfortable having those very personal discussions about your day-to-day life, which is what we offer them on a very regular basis. This is every day, all day.
Appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah, that was.
I don't know if that helped any at all.
That was super helpful. That I think it's this is helpful for me in part because my nonprofit is also setting up a mentorship program, and so hearing about different models is really useful to me. And if you have like a pointer or a one sheet of like, what you were using when you were initially structuring this that you could send to me, I would love to see that. It sounds like it's clearly working well for the students, so that's terrific. Okay, I guess my other comments were, I'll try to keep this brief. I'm really glad to hear other board members talking about capacity and sustainability. I found your final slide where you kind of had set out, here's what we're currently doing with what everyone's responsibilities are, and then having all of those other bubbles pop up of like all the other things that we want to do. And it made me think about how often in politics we hear about unfunded mandates, and we want to be careful not to load 10 people's worth of unfunded mandates on your shoulders, right? So I not to belabor that point, I think we're all aware, it does make me, I was thinking about how you, I was glad to hear you referencing how you can now start directing people to Dr. Fiorenza if it's curriculum related, or Dr. Sanders if it's hiring related. And that makes a lot of sense to me as a way to manage some of this load. Just last week, I was talking to Dr. Fiorenza about grading policies and equity at the school, and was impressed with, well, she has a lot more knowledge about this than I do. So she was filling me in on this, and is clearly thinking through these issues thoroughly. So that's great. It's great to hear. I suspect you still need more help though. And I guess my last comment is really a comment for the board. I'm new to this board and I'm new to this work, right? So I know many of you have been working on it for a very long time. And now we have Dr. Hardy, we have these people in place. And I suspect that there is a real strong desire to see results, right? You've been working on this for so long, and now the work is happening, and now we want to see results. And so I want to emphasize for the board and for everyone listening that this is still a pandemic, and we are still in that situation, right? We are still, we have undergone 2 years of trauma. The staff, the faculty, the administrators, the students, everybody, right? And we're not out of it yet. Trauma doesn't get processed until often years later after the events are done, right? So, and in particular for our Black and Brown students, they have been hit harder on average by the pandemic, right? Our lower income students have been hit harder on average by the pandemic. And so you will see that reflected in their grades and their achievement. And so I suspect that all of these efforts that we're putting in are going to help buffer that, right? And have been helping buffer that along and giving our students some desperately needed support. But it just I feel like the data for these 2 years and maybe for another year to come just has to have a big pandemic bracket around it, or a big asterisk. I'm very much in favor of data-driven policy, but I think we have to keep that context in mind. So I know I hammer this drum a lot, but that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I would only say quickly in response, amen. Like, I don't have much to add there. The capacity building, that last slide is shown on purpose. It's meant to let everyone know that I see an issue here. It's meant to be a red flag. And I was reluctant to show it. And I want to thank specifically Dr. Duffy for encouraging me to be transparent. He attended one of our public presentations. And because we did share this with people prior, getting feedback from stakeholders. It's not just about managing the load. You are 100% correct, but it's also about managing the message. It's about changing this notion that equity is a side conversation. Hey, what are we doing about curriculum? Oh, what about equity? How does that fit into equity? The fact that you're asking that question means we have a problem, because we weren't discussing it as part of the discussion. So it is absolutely a load piece, but it's also a messaging piece for our entire community. We should all be a part of this work. It's not the sole responsibility of one person named Patrick. And then lastly, I've heard the Board of Education say, at least in the last 2 meetings, we want to support and we have resources. I would ask board member Kabri, be a little more patient than February. If you give me a little more time, don't bring it up yet, because I absolutely intend to test your resolve on that support. I'd like a little more time to talk with the superintendent about what I think I need. And I do have some ideas, but I know he won't have that before February. So board member Henry, if you could be just a little more patient, because I am coming with some capacity conversation, because I don't have a choice.
Well, thank you for saying, Dr. Hardy. I was actually making notes for future agenda items, and I won't put that for February.
Greg, you better thank me for that later, man.
All right, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Hardy, and really your whole team for excellent work. I think this was clear communication in what is a very complex thing, and being able to make it understandable to simpletons like me. So thank you for that. I appreciate the discipline and the focus. Special thanks to Melody Brown, because she's doing this, forcefully. Question, or one other comment and then a question. One thing I really appreciated in what you shared was the fact, the emphasis on program evaluation, because as we talk about resources, it's important that we're putting our resources on those things that are effective, whether it means tweaking, et cetera. Not only do they tie up resources, but they also are part of the burnout, et cetera. So that's a critical part, I believe, in this whole process. And I think you gave it due justice in your communication. I had one specific question, and it's probably more for Mr. Crisp, which is, I'm intrigued as we talk about these efforts, when you try to gain, more recruitment. One of the key goals is to recruit into the motivational mentorship and get the numbers back up. So how are we going to do that?
Go ahead, Mr. Crisp, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The plan moving forward is very simple and very easily done. And to this point, I believe when we started this semester, or the first semester of this school year, we were seeing 10 students on Fridays over the course of our 3 lunch periods. That's how many students we saw. So in 3 periods of school, we saw 10 students, because the students come to us voluntarily. We do not force them. They don't come. It's not a requirement or anything of that nature. So we were seeing 10 students, I believe, in those first few weeks of mentoring. And now we see upwards of that lower mark, 25, on a regular basis, day to day already. And that's given the state of the pandemic. That's us moving offices and a bunch of different outliers that I can't fully go into because there's just so many of them, and it's already 9:13 and I still have to go to work tomorrow. But it's definitely one of those situations, and I'm only there 3 hours of the day on a usual day-to-day basis. So the amount of work that we have to do and have to get done happens within that 3 hours of me being there and making sure that that can happen. And that's why the numbers are where they are now, and they're still growing. Even today, we had 6 new students come in just from the student referral program that we, or not program, but setup that we have, where students have been coming in on a regular basis that we just met this year, and they're bringing in more students. And that number is ever expanding, and it expands pretty much on itself. It's not much that we have to do other than what it is that we do, and just do it very well.
Patrick, if you wouldn't mind, this happens to me. It happens to me as well when you're talking to the Board of Education. I want you to go back to the board member's original question, which was, how are we doing it? So if you wouldn't mind just going right back in about 45 seconds or less and mention the specific efforts to recruit, the tabling, the speaking to the various groups. If you could give him a direct response to those, please, real quick.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry. Definitely. Tabling was the first initial effort in which we were able to get that first group of students to make our numbers start to rise in the beginning. And then from the tabling and getting that initial group of students to come in, we started our student ambassadorship situation where we have student ambassadors that go out, bring in new people that they feel would fit the mold of what it is that we do, or that ultimately feel like they need to be in that space. And that's how the numbers have began to grow to this point so far.
Thank you.
Okay. I cannot tell you how thrilled, I don't know what the right word is. Like my heart is singing at hearing all of this. Like this is mind blowing and so refreshing and so welcomed. I really appreciated the insight into the project management part of it, because I think community members and board members, yeah, we've been talking about this stuff a long time, and we do get impatient and we do make a lot of assumptions that stuff is just going to get done somehow. But seeing the project management piece, it really drives home, like that is the work right there, right? Like that is the actual steps that it takes. And I think it's a really great reminder for all of us about all of the work that goes on behind the scenes. So it was just, I loved that part of it, because we don't really get that, right? I think some of these presentations are wonderful and all that work is happening. It's just, that's the less glamorous side, right? Like it's not the glossy side, but it's the real work. So I really appreciated that view. And I look forward to seeing the chart get filled out. I'm sure you are too. The capacity thing, of course, is real. And I am happy to hear that you will be asking for the resources that you need. We can't do the work. This is the reason I think pretty much all of us, frankly, as far as I know, one of the main reasons we all sort of wanted to be on this board. So this is kind of our baby. And so we are happy. I am happy to support you. So thank you for all of this. And thank you to your team. I do want to perhaps embarrass a little bit Mr. Patrick Crisp. I remember hearing about him for the first time in 2015 when he was a brand new graduate through our mutual friend, Stephen Jackson. Phenomenal student, great kid, like hot shot, and he has not disappointed. So it's so cool to see this sort of come, from student to grad to now employee. Like it's so great to see this work coming to fruition. I know he's always cared about this. So anyway, it's just wonderful. So,
Greatly appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you. So anyway, this was wonderful. I don't know if anyone has any closing thoughts or additional comments they wanted to make.
Thank you all very much for your patience and your very substantive questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. That was really fantastic. So we look forward to hearing more. Not in February, though. We'll give you some months. Okay. Next, let's see, what do we have? We have some action items. We have the presentation of the fiscal year 2021 audit report and comprehensive annual financial report. I move that we approve the audit and the financial report as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Fred. All right. Craig, is there a presentation for us?
Not a full presentation. We have our Director of Finance, Alyssa Alfano, is here, and we also have our representatives from Baker Tilly. Looks like Joe Lightcap is here with us. Thanks for joining us tonight. And this is, our annual audit report that we bring to the board at this time, and it's here presented for your official adoption. So if you have any questions about it, we have our folks here to help answer those questions.
All right, questions from board members?
I gotta figure out, raise my hand.
No, you're good, Tom, you can go.
All right, I wanted to go up in the upper left here. So, going from an energized report on our racial equity work to an audit is quite the transition. But I really had one question I always like to ask, just to be candid. which is from the auditors. Are there any deficiencies that were observed that we need to know about from the audit book?
Yeah, so a little background about deficiencies. So we look at internal controls over the major transaction cycles of the district to plan our audit procedures, the nature, timing, and extent of them. Not necessarily to give you an opinion on internal controls, but if something comes to our attention that we feel the board should know about, we will put that in writing, and we issue an audit results letter that I believe you have. I'm happy to report for, I think maybe the third consecutive year, there are no internal control comments to report to the board. You've done a great job of putting the right people in the right spots to mitigate any weaknesses that could be there. It's still a small staff, but there's a lot of good compensating controls and things like that to help mitigate the weaknesses and give you some comfort that that the financial reports that you see on a monthly basis and at year end are properly stated.
Okay, thank you. My second area is now getting into the more detailed report and into one of my favorite buckets, which gets into the data on the pension and the pension liability. And the reason I ask is just because with us always being concerned that at some point there could be a shift in policy and the district could begin bearing a bigger burden. The question is, what is the burden that the district would bear? And my specific concern is, if I read the report correctly, last year our district's liability was $404 million. And this year it's 280 million, which is a pretty big change. And so if in the what if the district if that were to shift to the district, I know it's all this, well, however it's done, but that's a pretty big change in numbers. So what does it mean to us?
Well, that is a great question, and I wish I had a great answer. To your point, there is a lot of unknowns in how the state would dole it out, how you would potentially have to pay for it. And to your point on the liability changing, so the statewide liability is allocated to the member districts based on your annual contributions. So it's not spread out. It's a one flip in time. If there's a significant change in certain districts, that could inflate what happens or what doesn't happen. It could increase or decrease your proportionate share. And also, unfortunately, we've seen errors in reporting in certain districts where you have an employer piece and employee piece. If they're combined together, your contributions look higher, your percentage looks higher, and you have a higher liability. It gets corrected and it goes back down. So that's just to say that the current allocation method isn't what I would say is the best way to do it. And I would hope if the liability, more of the liability would go onto the district's plate, that they would fix that. That'd be step one, is fix the allocation so that everyone understands that the liability to the district is really what representative of your teachers.
Okay, and my last thank you for that, but it doesn't, I guess you said I guess we have to wait until we get there, but it's a concerning issue. The last point is just my definition of insanity, which is how we can have two different, I don't care if we have two different actuaries, two different assumptions for what the long-term rate of inflation is in our data. It just, it defies gravity. So
I would say one of those you do have, there's discussions that you could have with the actuary, the district's actuary, to get their input on there and see, if the percentages could be more, closely aligned or the same as what the state puts out there.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that just, when you're talking about big numbers, that small percentages change numbers big ways. So I think that just makes sense to me. So, but thank you.
Else? All right, Gail, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Okay, our next item here is certification of our mid-year graduates.
Yes.
I move that, sorry, give me 1 sec. I move that we certify the 2022 mid-year graduates. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Yes, Greg, please go ahead.
My apologies. I was just so excited to talk about mid-year grads. You know what? Actually, normally this would be something that Ms. Parker would be presenting, but she regrets to, she's unable to be here tonight. And so Dr. Fiorenza is here if the board has any questions. This is something that we bring to the board every semester based off of those who graduate mid-year. So you see the list. Any questions?
Well, a hearty congratulations to all of our grads, of course, especially during these challenging pandemic years we've been going through. Gail, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll, please.
Yes. Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Harris, yes. Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have the emergency repair. I move to approve the emergency repair of the building automation system for a cost of $44,800. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Greg, did you want to speak to this a little?
Just a little bit. This is a rarely invoked need. This was an emergency purchase that we needed to undergo because the cost of this upgrade was well above the $25,000 spending limit that we have as a district without board approval. But we're in the middle of a cold winter and the coldest part of the year that we've had so far. And part of our air handling system simply just broke down. And so our executive director of operations, Ron Anderson, and his team realized that this would be something that we would have to move on quickly, and they recommended that we do so. And so this is something that we have already put out to not to bid, but we've already contacted the contractor to have them come in and begin this work. And Ron, I don't know if you want to add any more to that, but it is work that is beginning. And I know it was beginning today. We got an update on this work, and hopefully within the next week or so, I believe it will be complete. Do you want to tell us a little bit more, Ron? Oh, hey, Ron, you're muted.
I could speak if need be, Greg.
Fred, I'm sorry, I didn't see you in there. That's great. I'm glad you logged in. So Fred or Ron, feel free.
What this entails is our building automation system encompasses the entire building, and it's more than 20 years old. And part of the system, the building's divided up into different areas, and part of the older system is called our legacy system, which has a proprietary communication bus. All of them have proprietary communication buses, and we have one of them right now. There's I believe 5 of them left in the building, and and they branch out and take care of X amount of pieces of equipment, each one of the communication buses. The one we're dealing with right now, it has failed. We got it going again. It's failed, and it's no longer supported. So we're currently repulling the new communication cable, and we're going around and we're gathering up the new controllers for the equipment, because the older stuff can't communicate on the new bus. It's just a difference in technology. And the one that has failed affects 13 rooms and offices. So what we're having to do right now is manually go into each one of the rooms and make manual adjustments to heat and keep a balance of hot and cold in the rooms to keep them around 70 degrees. Currently, one of our contractors is working second shift, and they've just started to pull the communication bus. They started last night, and they'll be working on it for the next couple nights. And then when that is done, then Automated Logic, our controls contractor, will be coming in and hanging the new devices on this communication bus and tying them back into each individual room, and getting everything back up, getting everything back up to par, and it'll be the latest and greatest. The problem is we're going through and replacing this stuff as we're upgrading our mechanical systems throughout the building. This one just happened to have stuff that just had failed. It failed, and we couldn't bring it back to life.
Thank you.
And we're also planning on putting the rest of them on the 10-year plan, because they're starting to fail because they're past their useful life, and we don't want to get into a situation where next winter we'll be shut down certain classrooms because it's too cold, or they're getting extremely hot.
Thank you. Fred, did you have a question?
Yes, Ron kind of answered it for me. My concern is, in reading it and with Gret's description, my concern was with the word upgrade. And if these are items that are at the end of their useful life, they should be a part of our long-term facilities planning, and emergency expenditures I see not as upgrades, I see them as repairs or maintenance. But I think Ron just answered my question, so thank you.
Okay, questions from anybody else? All right, Gail, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky.
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have an information item, which was an update on board goals. People can read that at their convenience. We also have a report on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. They had homework. Part of their homework was maybe to watch this board meeting. So if any of them are watching, thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have any future agenda items?
I didn't.
Yeah, Fred?
Yes, I have a couple. Actually, our student council representative, Haley Rigdon, kind of touched on the first one that I wanted to bring up. And that is, I'd like to hear about the utilization of our new Student Resource Center. When we voted to engage in Project One, I think a big part of the rationale of creating the centralized Student Resource Center and the Student Commons was to give students an area where they can congregate safely during extended hours. All right, and that they could be in the building earlier in the morning and stay later in an area where they can engage with whether it's tutors or friends, to collaborate on, on schoolwork or, whatever they want to do. So I'd like to hear what, given we're in a pandemic, I understand that, but I would, given that, I would like to hear, what the plans of the district are from the administration of the utilization going forward on a permanent basis of the Student Resource Center. And a corollary to that is, while we're on Student Resource Center, is perhaps considering naming the Student Resource Center after Dr. Pruitt-Adams, because I think that her legacy of change here in this school is important. And I think we ought to look at that, maybe even engage the Imagine Foundation to see if there's something we could do with that. My second issue has to do, and Gina brought this up several meetings ago, but we need to talk about district communication with our public and our stakeholders. It seems that every time that there is a major issue, some people in the community come out with these self-created false narratives. And we've seen what's happened in this country over the last 4 to 5 years. And if you say things enough times and you say them long enough, people start to believe it, even though it's not true. I saw some things on social media regarding the curriculum change, where somebody was trying to promote Trinity High School. So they said that we were giving up all of our honors and AP classes, and it just isn't true. The fact of the matter was, it was actually 180 degrees from that statement. We've been getting some emails over the past few weeks about an issue that's not even in front of us, an issue that we asked the administration to take back to the Community Finance Committee and come up with a recommendation. There is no recommendation in front of us, and people on both sides are telling us how to vote, and there's nothing to vote on. So I think we need to control our narrative. We need to control and to get our word out in a much more effective way. And I think we need to have a good portion of a board meeting dedicated to that conversation. And those are my two recommendations for future board meeting items.
So I think we should probably ascertain if there's board consensus for those items, because both of them require, of course, input of administrative time. So the first one, around utilization of our resource center, I'm assuming that could be woven into another report, right? I see Dr. Fiorenza nodding her head. But it seems to me like that's something that is part of student engagement generally. So is that something that we anticipate would come to the board in some form anyway?
It's possible. I don't know, Dr. Fiorenza, if you want to speak to that. Did you unmute yourself for that? Feel free to jump in.
I did. I was actually going to ask Mr. Arkin a follow-up question regarding like what you were considering relative to a timeline. This SRC has only been open 3 weeks. And so just kind of getting our feet, getting a flow, working the 3rd floor library with the 2nd floor tutoring center is taking a little bit of time. And as the student noted, there's some student wonderings about process. And so I would like a little bit of time for us to work out a few kinks since it's so very brand new. So before I respond to like when we could complete something, I was wondering if Mr. Arkin had a timeline that he was looking for.
No, I don't have a timeline. I just, am looking for a plan, because I think there was a rationale behind our approval of the construction of the Student Resource Center, and to make sure that that rationale and reasoning behind is incorporated in the use.
Okay. So with that said, I would like to incorporate it more towards the end of the year in
That's
May,
fine.
so that we could evaluate how it has gone for this second semester, and then we could have next steps and feedback from students about what we might need to do next year. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good.
And if I could just get like thumbs up from people, is there board consensus that that's something that we would want to hear about? Okay, eyes have it. All right, great. And then Fred's second point was around board communications. Fred, it seems to my guess is that this is something that you'd want to do in an open session, but I think it could also go in a closed session governance conversation as well. So did you have a specifics around that?
If it could go either way, I prefer things to be transparent and out in an open session. And that's just my personal opinion. But whatever the consensus of the board is, it'll be fine.
So could I get like a show of hands of some sort of thumbs up maybe for board members who'd be interested in doing that at a future board meeting? See 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Sarah, can I just jump in to just clarify this conversation? Because I know you and I have talked about working on communications in general, and there's some funding set aside for communications help that we haven't utilized yet. So I think all of that can be folded into this, but I think maybe the specific thing that I would love, I think I've felt similarly frustrated this past week with, newspaper pieces appearing with, factually inaccurate information. And so trying to figure out what is a good mechanism for dealing with that kind of thing. It is, like communications is such a big topic. So, which I'm happy to talk about at length, but I think the specific piece of like how and if we should engage this kind of thing is maybe somewhere to focus the conversation. If that seems appropriate to you as well. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to jump in really quick and say that over the past few weeks, Karen Sullivan has put out a communication survey for our stakeholders to give us feedback. And I think that is a very solid vehicle, to allow us to enter this conversation. So, it's packaged into that, I think, in many ways.
So Greg, was that, with the results of that survey, something that was going to be presented to the board? I assumed it was for internal use, but was that?
It is for internal purposes, but I know that we had plans to, push that, the findings of that out, similar to how we've put out the results of, the thought exchange communications that we put out. So, I just want to point out that feedback is I think critical to this conversation that Fred brought up. So.
Okay, great. That sounds like a plan. Kabrib.
Yeah, I just have two. One I think is more for Dr. Parker. First of all, I was very happy to see last year the board, prior to me joining, passed that or approved the mental health program, the tiered system. So I'd like to know how that's working. How do we have a timeline for that? Is it working? Is it being utilized? Things we could change? Are we resourcing staff appropriately? Just kind of overview where we are, particularly with the pandemic we're in. And I know mental health is a nationwide issue for everyone, particularly our students and students of color and just in low-income students. So just want to know if it's working, and do we need to take any you need assistance, or how is it working? Pretty much that's just my general. The timeline, don't really have a specific timeline, but perhaps maybe the next 2 or 3 months that could come up, and just have an assessment do we need to make any changes?
I'm sorry, Kabir, I missed, and I want to make sure I get it. I missed the very first thing you said. I know we're talking about mental health and how things are going, pandemic. What is it?
Well, no, it's the tier program that was approved last spring, I believe, for mental health for the students, the intervention program. So I just want to know how, if that's working, if we need to make changes, if, just essentially just an update where we are and anything else from the board. Yeah.
You had a second point
Yeah,
as well.
I did.
Didn't you?
I know if you're, yeah. And the second one is just, we talked about it last year and this is more productive for your Enza, I believe. Just the trades we have offer at the school. Just basically what are we offering? What are our thoughts of adding additional trades? As we're talking about equity, every student's not going to college or the military or to your school. We have a community of people that work in the trades. We even have business owners who work in the trades. And I actually have spoken with a neighbor of mine, and they have an interest in working with us in the trades, right? Just even, I think we're great for equity. I think it's a great way to provide different options for students that may not have the capacity. So that I think is a very needed conversation, and then a true plan how we move forward and do that, because we have different trades that we need: electrician, plumber, HVAC, carpentry, painters. So if we can incorporate that into as from my equity, that's just that's necessary. So Dr. Freelancer, I know the timeline again, I'll say sooner the better, but I don't want to stack you too much, but I do think we need to put on the forefront of our minds as we're talking about student success.
That discussion, sir, is slated for April. Myself and Dr. Julie Lamb will be talking with the board and the community about our college and career pathways, and we will be emphasizing careers as not just for students who aren't going to college, but an honorable, like that's a path, and that's a very lucrative and serious path that we need to bolster. And so Dr. Lamb is working on that, and we will be presenting that to the board in April.
And I love how you said lucrative, because I do rehab projects and I know what I pay these tradesmen. So believe me, they make money.
Yes, I think our students need to know that. They need to know their options, all of them.
And I also just want to throw out there that the update on our support systems to your first topic, Kabir, is slated for the February committee of the whole meeting. Principal Parker is going to be doing that as part of the Attainment strategic plan. So those two are in the works with the timeline we already have in place. Thank you.
Gina.
I don't think you just said what I thought you said, what I was going to ask, Craig, but it had something. Kabir hit my point. The one thing I want to follow up in is I've asked a couple months in a row about getting a student on our school board. So I would really like, I have reached out already to the school district near us to get information from them about their process. I know that they're a K-8 district, not a high school district. But I really do feel that position, however it comes about or however it looks or whatever iteration it takes, would be important. And I am not going to stop asking about it. So I would love for us to discuss it at some point. You may have something in the works, but I haven't heard anything about it. So would love to. Yeah.
No, Janet, I think we discussed that. We must have discussed that at a point at a board meeting that you weren't able to attend. So we had a good discussion at the table. The board wants additional information, including kind of what you just referenced, like what are models that are out there? What are exemplars? And we also agreed that we would kick it back to the student, the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee for this group to discuss what it would mean to have a student on the board, kind of what would those commitments be? What type of model would they suggest? Do we want 1, 2 students? Do we want rotating students? How do we want that to unfold? And that is why we gave these students the assignment of, look, we're going to have informed conversation about this next month. But in order to have that conversation, you actually need to see a board meeting and come back with comments, questions, wonderings, all those things, so we can engage that conversation as a committee. And then after we get all that process unfolding, coming kind of from the students up, and we bring the exemplar models into this, we'll be able to package up some sort of recommendation to the board. So it's been fun to see to finally get that conversation going with our kiddos. So thanks for bringing that up again.
Thank you for the update for whatever I missed in my absence. And thank you, board, for having that discussion.
All right, folks, I think it's that time. If there are no other questions or comments from anyone.
So moved.
Hey,
Second.
Aye.
all right, everyone.
Aye.
Thank you for your
Aye,
time
aye.
this evening. We're adjourned. Have a good weekend. See you soon.
All right.
Thanks.